Hey guys, Marsegan here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of Gotenks being the pick for Tanabata this year. We're obviously still waiting on any scrap of news about what it could be. I think we are going to see some kind of preview within the next couple of days, right? Because I think last year the unit dropped on the 30th, which means as early as, what, the 27th maybe the 26th. We'll see some kind of teaser either on Twitter or in-game with the, like, a new Dokkan Fest is coming, and then around the 28th I would expect to see something on Twitter in terms of whether it's the kit or the animations or something like that, right? But at this point we still have absolutely no idea what it's going to be. They haven't dropped any hints or anything at all. We were expecting news a little bit earlier on based on last year, but when you go back and look at the sort of video, it was like a JP producer letter video, kind of like a mini Dokkan now, I guess, where they announced the theme of the Tanabata last year, because that was all it was, right? They announced that it was Future Saga, but that video was mostly talking about like superhero stuff. And I think a lot of people kind of assumed we would hear news same time this year, but obviously nothing else crazy like that is going on. So probably still going to be a couple of days until we get actual confirmation of the Tanabata theme. And I did make a video. I've made a couple of videos talking about potential like themes for the Tanabata, and I did do one for Gotenks and then like a Carnival LR Boo. And some of the feedback on that was interesting, and lately I've noticed in the community, I know a lot of you guys have told me in the past, like, you don't use Twitter and stuff like that, so I would be very interested to know what you guys think. But a lot of people on Twitter have been talking about Gotenks, and it's turned into a pretty big deal. Some people think that he absolutely deserves, like, a Dokkan Fest LR. Other people think that even though he might deserve a Dokkan Fest LR, he doesn't deserve to headline a huge celebration like the Tanabata. And other people, just obviously there are people out there for every character, don't like Gotenks at all, don't think he deserves the Dokkan Fest LR, so obviously think that him as the pick for Tanabata would be really bad. So I just wanted to do this video to talk about my thoughts, and mainly just to put this out there and get your guys' thoughts on this subject, because I think Gotenks is an interesting character, right? The Boo Saga is very hit or miss for some people in terms of how well it was received. Like, as a kid, it is probably, what, is it longer than the Android Saga? I guess if you combine all of it from the very beginning and the Cell games, like right up to the end, I don't know if it is, but it seemed like when I was young and watching it on TV, it was one of the longer sagas. And for me personally, I've never been a huge fan of Gotenks, but Gotenks like introduced Fusion to the series, right? Because I'm fairly sure Fusion Reborn wasn't out at that point, right? I mean, obviously in Fusion Reborn, they fuse into Gotenks as if they've already done it before, right? So obviously in terms of the movie timeline, it comes afterwards, but in terms of the release, I'm not entirely sure. I think it came out afterwards. But anyway, Gotenks introduced like the fusion dance thing, and a lot of people, myself included, biggest gripe with Gotenks is obviously the fact that he's so cocky, like just doesn't get the job done when he could, when, you know, the stakes are essentially like the survival of the human race, and he's messing around. Like, now there's been comparisons made for like him and Vegito and Gogeta, where like, you know, once they fuse, depending on which one is the dominant personality, they get a little bit cocky or whatever. But again, we could go into like this could be a huge discussion about that, but that's not really what it's about. Vegito obviously being cocky against Boo, it all comes down to it being part of his plan to be absorbed, to revive everybody like trapped inside. And then Gogeta, when he appears in the movie, he is not cocky. Like Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta is messing around with Omega, but like Super Gogeta, who was designed around the same time, like, and then the movie came out, you know, he's like barely in it at the end, right? He's just all no nonsense, all serious, just absolutely annihilates Janemba. So the characters can be very different, and I can understand why some people don't like Gotenks, but I think Gotenks deserves to have a good unit, right? Like, in terms of the theme of Gotenks and the theme of the Boo Saga, like, the whole point of Goku, not, you know, there's the comment about how he could have beaten Fat Boo as Super Saiyan 3 Goku. but him like leaving the responsibility of protecting the world to the next generation, teaching Goten and Trunks how to fuse, like, you know, it's a pretty big moment in the show, regardless of how well, like, the characterization of Gotenks himself was actually handled. And I do think he does some cool stuff, right? Like, I've always been a big fan of the Super Saiyan 3 design, so I think Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks does look cool. I really do like this art for the physical one. He has some wacky attacks, right? Like the energy rings, creating the suicide ghosts and all that kind of stuff. Like, pretty interesting stuff as a character. Very unique abilities, right? It's not just like abilities used by Goten or Trunks, not like they really have a lot of their own signature abilities or anything, but Gotenks is kind of like their time to shine with these like brand new moves that, you know, neither of them ever do when they're unfused. And this Gotenks, this is obviously the last standalone Super Saiyan 3 one. This one is quite old at this point, right? 6 years pretty much. And then the last Dokkan Fest Gotenks was this Int one, and he is like 3 years old at this point. The last unit we actually got was this Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks and Piccolo that came out as part of the anniversary. These guys are the side banner unit for the Z duo. I've obviously not seen a huge amount. I remember when they came out, like the initial reception to this card was that it wasn't very good. And a lot of people were disappointed because the animations for this unit are actually really cool. And a lot of people were disappointed because those animations could have been used for a Dokkan Fest Gotenks. Now, we know they've said as much themselves that they're happy to like redo old animations that have been done before in like the better quality as they bring out new units. So I don't think there's a lack of animations that we could see. Especially when you think about the fact that the Tanabata Festival unit is usually, at least for the last few years in a row, been a joined forces unit. So I would think it most likely that if we are going to get a Gotenks, it probably is going to be a Goten and Trunks that fuse into Gotenks, right? Now, whether or not they start off as base, whether they start off as Super Saiyan, I mean, apart from the physical Dokkan Fest that really does need like a update, well, an easy A, I guess, there isn't really like a great Super Saiyan Goten and Trunks, so I think in terms of like links and teams and that, it probably would be better for them to start off as Super Saiyan. And then, yeah, fuse into Gotenks. Maybe they fuse straight into Super Saiyan 3. I don't know how they would choose to do it. Maybe they fuse into Super Saiyan Gotenks and then you have an active skill to turn Super Saiyan 3. That does make him kind of similar to this guy, because obviously he turns into Super Saiyan Gotenks and then has an active skill to transform to Super Saiyan 3. He just starts off as base Gotenks. But, I mean, I think it could be interesting for a celebration, because for me, when it comes down to the picks for these big celebrations, I'm trying to think about the bigger picture of, like, what can come along with those things. Like, I did a video the other day talking about should Dokkan follow the hype of Legends and do a superhero themed Tanabata celebration, but when we were looking at the units, it leads us to this issue of like, well, who do they easy A, like who gets awakenings, all this kind of stuff, because there's very few superhero things in Dokkan. But Gotenks is on a ton of categories, right? Like, obviously he's a fusion character, so he's on fusion and fused fighters. Depending on which form he gets for the card, he has the multiple different Super Saiyan categories. Buu Saga hasn't really had any updates in a long time. We got things like Youth, Special Pose, Rapid Growth, Saviors, Connected. I mean, just look at all of these categories that he's on. So many categories, and depending on the forms, he obviously has things like Mastered Evolution and all this kind of stuff. Like, he would help out a ton of teams if they brought out a really good Gotenks. And I think the quality of the unit matters to me more than the choice itself, right? Like, there are certain characters that I probably wouldn't be super hyped. Like, I've seen a lot of people talking about Universe 6 tournaments, so like Blue Kaioken Goku and a new hit. For me personally, that wouldn't be that hype. But if the Blue Kaioken Goku was like an insane unit that works super well on a bunch of teams that I like to run, then yeah, obviously I'm going to be happy with that and I'll be excited to summon for him, even if the unit wasn't my top pick. So one of the things I seem to have noticed a lot in the community, especially with all this discourse that's going on Twitter, is a lot of people seem to be acting like if they don't make the absolute #1 hypest pick, then it's automatically like a fumble. But the thing you have to remember is that hype is incredibly subjective. Like, there are a lot of people that would go crazy with excitement if Tanabata was a new Gotenks, and then there's a lot of people that would be immediately disinterested and would reply to the tweets from the Dokkan thing being like, skip! But not everybody has the same opinions, right? It just kind of comes down to which characters you like, which characters you don't like. And whilst that is true for me as well, like I said, I think the quality of the card and the quality of the celebration overall is what really matters. Because Gotenks does open the door for some interesting possibilities. I mean, how cool would it be if they drop a new Gotenks? Maybe the theme of the Tanabata is more focused around like Majin Buu Saga, and then they decide to finally drop the Easy A's for like these two. Like, I think people would be very excited, because remember, last year's Tanabata had 2 LR EZAs. Now, they were yellow coin LRs. It was the Tech Goku Black and Zamasu and the STR Trunks in Mai. But there were 2 LR EZAs during the Tanabata last year. Imagine if this year it's a new Gotenks and then they drop these 2 EZAs. Like, this guy would be a massive help for the new Super Buu, even though obviously he wouldn't get like a 200% leader skill, but he could become insanely dominant like he was when he first came out. And speaking of, like, I mean, remember how crazy this unit was when it came out? Like, the only complaint about this unit was the fact that Super Vegito didn't really have damage reduction against normal attacks. So as soon as the bosses started to get harder, he started to take a bit too much damage. But, like, transforming and having a scouter for 10 turns when you're a unit that counters normal attacks. Like, you imagine this guy getting an Easy A now. And Dokkan Fest LRs, they don't normally, you know, mess up these Easy A's. Sometimes you can argue that they're not as powerful as maybe they should have been. But with the base kit that these guys have to work with, like, both of these units would be insane with Easy A's. And then, of course, we have the Gotenks and the Tech Exchange Buu that could potentially get Easy A's as well. They obviously are technically newer than the LRs for Global, but older for JP. So, I mean, I think either of these would be on the table if it was a Buu Saga themed celebration. But, I mean, the Buu Saga is a pretty big category that hasn't had a huge amount of buffs. I mean, I guess the anniversary LRs, right, are on the Buu Saga, but they didn't bring like a new leader skill for it. They bought them and their side banner unit, and then the free-to-play LR was a Buu Saga, but was an extreme unit that obviously doesn't fit on those teams, right? So it's not like the 8th anniversary was a massive Buu Saga buff. So, I don't know. There's a lot that they could do with a new Gotenks. Whilst it wouldn't be the #1 pick for me, I think it definitely could be hype. They could definitely put a lot of stuff into the celebration to make it exciting. So let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think Gotenks would be a good choice for the Tanabata? Do you think it would be a terrible choice? Do you think it entirely depends on the unit? Like, I know some people out there, even if the unit wasn't that great, would be excited for a new Gotenks. And then, of course, there are some people out there, just like with the Father-Son Gallic Gun, where a lot of people said that wasn't a hype enough moment to be a Dokkan Fest LR, even though the unit came out as, like, the best unit in the game at the time. There were still a lot of people that were disappointed. So, I think it is just one of those things, right? You can't please everyone all the time, but the viewpoint of the community at the moment really does seem to be like Dokkan has made a few missteps over the last few months, and they really need a big win with the Tanabata to get the community excited again. So let me know what you guys think down below. Is Gotenks an exciting enough pick or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.